Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget, hello.
And this is number 263, he said confidently, in sounding the jolly old shallows. Isn't it? And, well, actually, one of the things I wanted to say was that, this weekend, the previous weekend, we were at Scargill House in Yorkshire, where we were involved in the rebuilding of the place some years ago.
When you say rebuilding, you don't actually...
No, not rebuild. That would have been a disaster for me to be involved in that.
I know people who have been involved in that.
Getting it moving. And since then we've visited to do various events. And this weekend we were majoring on laughter, which was a very nice thing to do. And I must say, we're not just saying this because they might be listening, but it's true. They were a very, very nice bunch of people. There were about 50 people there, weren't there? They were so nice, so friendly.
Well, they were, and they'd come partly to enjoy laughing, I think. And that isn't the same as to enjoy copping out of the reality of how horrifically difficult life is at the moment in the world or any of those things, but just to create a space for laughing. Yeah.
And we were looking back, weren't we, at some of the early days of doing this stuff.
Well, and one of the things was something that very, very, very beginning of writing, you were asked to write an article, weren't you? And then another article. And so you thought you'd read...
Well, it wasn't only that. Yeah, no, I was told to go and read the...
I was just going to say
Christian magazine. Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, someone said go and read them all.
And then so you would know how to write the articles you've been asked to write.
Yes. Well, I think I'd already written those. They were absolute rubbish. I still got one of them. But anyway, I read them all, and I'm really, really glad I did, because it showed me what I really didn't want to do. Because there was a set of approaches in every area of faith back in the
in every area of life.
But it just the way you did things. One of the things about the articles was that you almost always ended up with a list of 5 or 6 points to remember as you approached living as a Christian in connection with whatever it is you were talking about. And they ranged amazingly from one thing to another. But so I decided to write my own version of one of those, which we began with at the weekend, didn't we?
And we so enjoyed it. It was an opportunity to look over bits and pieces of stuff that you'd written or we'd thought about that we haven't looked at for a long time. But this wasn't that different from some of the Christian magazines at the time. Well, maybe just a step or two away.
I think it's a slight exaggeration.
Anyway, but, see what you think.
I'll read that to you and you can see. So yeah, this is the sort of style. I mean, as you say, so these are the points to remember. Okay, about lawn mowing the Christian way.
Hold on. So that was the title of the article was mowing.
Mowing the lawn the Christian way.
Mowing the lawn the Christian way.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. 1. Do bear in mind that mowers can be noisy things. Does your neighbour have a small child who may be sleeping? Why not call over the fence or go round and ring the front doorbell to ask? Bang on the windows if necessary. Don't give up. Be persistent. Consideration for others is a part of outreach, actually. 2. Mowing the lawn can offer a tremendous opportunity for witnessing if your neighbour is also cutting his grass or relaxing in his garden after a hard day at work. Why not just lean over the fence and, in a natural sort of way, just start up a conversation about the Lord. 3. If such a conversation does get going, perhaps as a result of your neighbour spotting a selection of fish stickers strategically attached to the front and sides of your mower, casually point out to him that just as your grass will be cut and eventually dumped on the compost heap at the end of the garden, so his sins can be removed and disposed of in exactly the same way.
I'm surprised he would still be listening even at this point.
4. Remember that we are called upon to be good stewards in all areas of our lives. If yours is a cylinder mower, why not turn it off each time you pull it towards you and turn it on again for each forward stroke? This will honour God and I think have a profound effect on your neighbour,
I'm sure it would.
who will experience a growing awareness that you are not as other men.
Yes.
5. Why not start up a Christian lawn mowing club with other chaps from your church? Ask your unsaved neighbour if he would like to come along to one of the meetings. Tell him it's just a group of fellows sitting around in their shirt sleeves, admiring and comparing each other's mowers, drinking a glass or two of Schlur together, and discussing such subjects as the best fuel to use in their machines. It will be very easy to progress from there to asking him what fuels his life, and gently letting him know what fuels yours. After the first of these meetings, look him straight in the eye and tell him he is only a step away from becoming just like you and your friends. Finally, make a special study of the 40th chapter of Isaiah, in which we are taught that all men are like grass. Reflect on the fact that the Bible is to be taken literally. Be bold and obedient. Paint yourself bright green from head to foot. Bury your feet in the lawn and call your neighbour over to observe that the word of Scripture is indeed fulfilled. By now, he should be on the edge of seriously contemplating a move.
A move, yes, yeah.
So I don't know what people really thought of that in those early days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what were you trying to do you think? Apart from just writing something that was funny and that you felt the freedom to do, because really you were not very restrained by anything in particular at
I
the
just
time.
enjoyed being funny, to be honest.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
I appreciate that. But
the point about parody, I mean, I got past trying to define parody, but parody is kind of effective when something has reached a point where it needs to be parodied. In other words, it's become a cliche in itself, and people are beginning to simply not even see it, but just to assume that that's a way to approach life. And so
the thing is, it's like most of these things that there is a point within it that's kind of ish okay, and I don't mean actually any of this in particular, but I mean, very often it does make sense to enter into somebody's world, to be involved in the things they're interested in. Maybe I remember a men's group from many years ago where the person running it was just amazing at removing that sense of lostness that some people experience, especially maybe men, I don't know, but that feeling that you don't quite belong to anything. So I mean, I know things like I know things like railway enthusiasts.
Yeah,
they have a lot in common. So I suppose what I'm saying is the essence of what might be a good thing.
Yeah,
often gets turned into something.
That's right. You couldn't parody the man you were talking about just now. You couldn't parody what he did.
Oh no!
Because he was one of the few people I've ever known who genuinely befriended people, and he made some people who were either self-conscious or perhaps felt they didn't fit. He made them feel really good.
Yeah.
He was brilliant at it, and he never turned it into a Christian thing.
No, but that's the difference, isn't it, between following a formula for something.
Yeah,
the awful thought is, Adrian, that there might be somebody after reading that article all those years ago, what we're talking 40 years ago, who did actually set up a lawn mowing club. Because for some people that wouldn't seem that outrageous, really, at the time.
We've always said Christians can be like baby birds sitting with their mouths open waiting to have truths dropped into them, because there is a tightening if you come into faith without retaining your ability to broaden and look at the world in a wide way, you can get very stuck and actually shut down some of your normal responses to.
But I think the key for humour for us has been, if it was just laughing at other people doing stupid things, I think it might wear a bit thin. But we've always, we've just, I don't know, we just had pratfalls all through our lives, haven't we? And we've enjoyed laughing at ourselves as well.
Oh, yes.
Because that can be
yeah,
quite reassuring for people, I think, and but not motivationally, just that is true. I mean, most things that we set out to do
are based on our ridiculous lives. But there's, I know that if you don't do it from inside, it's very difficult to do constructive, useful humour.
I suppose that's what I'm saying,
like
really.
this.
Yeah.
And when the book I wrote that made the difference, which was the Sacred Diary of Adrian Blas, etc. When before that came out, I read it to some people, and one or two people said, "Well, it doesn't really cut very, it's not. It hasn't got much of an edge to it." And I wasn't trying to do anything then. I just liked writing funny stuff, really. But I really, really, really didn't want to hurt anybody. I wanted to laugh at the things that were oppressing me, because I felt like I was in a bit of a straitjacket. And in the course of doing that, other people recognised that they were also doing that or feeling like that, and there was a sort of freedom about it, and maybe even a feeling of rubbish clearing.
One of the things that was lovely, it was just hearing people laugh this weekend, wasn't it?
Great,
and somebody said who'd been widowed that it's hard to laugh. I mean, you can laugh when you're on your own. Of course you can. You can find something funny on TV, or you can talking to people. But actually being part of a crowd of people laughing is just a lovely thing. I think that's one of the great advantages. And we were talking, weren't we, about a young teacher that we met in South Africa. I'm sure we've mentioned this before, but she didn't know what to do with the fact that the small children that she was working with had stopped laughing. So much trauma in their lives, and we've only got to look around the world at the moment and see the level of trauma that children are experiencing in these war zones, or in areas where there's no food security. I mean, just awful. And she thought, they don't laugh anymore. So I know we've talked about this before, but it's central to this, really, isn't it? She thought, I got to get them laughing. And there was one little boy, and I remember her saying he had a very round little belly, and when he laughed, it wobbled. Getting him to laugh would set another child off, and then another and another. And Peppa Pig, which I'm sure hardly anybody would know, but because we've got a 4-year-old grandson, from age of 3 onwards, we've watched a lot of it. Every now and then they lie on their backs and they laugh.
That's right. Or they jump up and down in muddy puddles. Well, they jump up and down
in muddy puddles, and then they laugh.
Yes, that's right,
and there's something about that is just lovely. It was lovely. Yeah, I keep saying the word lovely, but I think laughter is unlocking, laughter is of value, but basically it's just nice. It's great.
It doesn't, it's very hard to think of times when it does any harm. I suppose it could do.
Well, I don't know. I remember
when
what were you going to say?
What were you going to say? When does it do harm?
Well, I was remembering years ago, we went with our kids to a very famous comedian doing a very famous evening in a big theatre in Brighton. And our little line actually didn't find it funny. It was very cruel and very, yes, I suppose it was witty, but it was mainly cruel and biting.
And actually he changed his set, hadn't he? Because
it was Brighton, and therefore you have to talk about the gay things and all the rest of it all the way through. But it wasn't anything to do with our attitudes to things.
No,
it was
it just wasn't funny.
It wasn't funny. It was nasty. And so there's always going to be... I mean, Spitting Image was cruel sometimes, wasn't it? Even though it was very funny.
Yeah, it was.
And you can sometimes find yourself laughing at something and then wishing you weren't, I suppose is what I'm saying, really.
It did make me realise that about the ever-present danger for anyone who does anything that works to want to play Hamlet after that, What do you mean? Well, that you do some stuff and it's okay, and then you think, well, there must be a thing here for me to do that is larger than that and more significant. Actors thinking, I've done some comedy, but I want to play something just to go beyond what you actually have. It's easy to do. And if you remember, before the first time I went to South Africa, and we all went, didn't we, later on? But they phoned and said, would you want to do a tour? And I said, because at that time I didn't feel like I had anything serious to say, which I didn't really. And she said, I said, I haven't got a word for South Africa, which is how you sort of put it when you think God's given you something. And she said, we don't want a word for South Africa. We want to have a laugh.
Yeah. Because
the nights were long. It was the year before the elections, and when I did finally get there, the atmosphere was toxic in many places, and it was, and I wasn't going to go because I thought I didn't have anything serious to say, but actually, in the end, that was pretty serious.
It isn't an expression I've heard, but to some extent, laughter when you're all together, that does cast out fear, because it just joins you together, doesn't it? In a way that maybe we don't quite value enough. We're always slightly worried that we have lesser things within us, and that laughing and humour is not desperately worthy, really. But I was saying about this joint thing about laughing. I was thinking about when all those years ago, when something that came on television would be something everyone talked about the next day because there was not much on television, and the outrageous humour.
There was a cartoon once in Private Eye, wasn't there, with two people standing at a bar saying, Monty Python, Monty Python.
Well, I was just going to say it was Monty Python. But I mean, you would say to people, "Did you see it last night?" And then you would laugh.
That's right. Yeah.
Because something new had happened that opened people up, and I think so. It's got to be new, whether it's gentle or hard hitting. Or I mean, they were so funny. Some of those.
Yeah, there were. Yeah. Yeah, I found it very interesting to just trace some of these things, to do a line of things that we've done over the years. I don't think they've changed that much. I mean, I don't think I feel particularly anxious to do harsh parody or anything of things, but unfortunately, you see the same things happening in the church now as
you do.
We saw it then.
Yeah,
it's just so people are determined to create little jails for themselves, and it's very, very difficult. We often talked about the little prison that some people are in, which goes, I can't do it, only God can do it, but if I don't do it, it's my fault.
And deep down, that is what a lot of people think,
exactly,
I suppose.
Yeah. So,
well, we have. I mean, over the years, I think it's had to make us laugh, hasn't it? Really, to start with. But then over the years, things like, yes, as you say, the prisons created by styles of prayer, the prisons created by shoulds and woulds, and by heavy. Well, I think the term is heavy shepherding, isn't it? Where, far from the sheep, the shepherd looking after the sheep, the shepherd, I don't know, squashes them. Well, yes, but it's true, sits on them, makes it impossible for them to breathe. And a lot of what we were talking about this weekend was, if you open windows, then fresh air can come in. Yeah. And humour is like that sometimes. It's suddenly a window is opened, and you can laugh at something that you thought was sacred or you thought was the most important thing in the world.
I remember hearing a Jewish scholar saying that to those who understand the language and the context, that quite a bit of Jesus' stories would have been very funny to the people who heard them. They would
shocking and funny,
which I don't think we, as kind of
Do you think the next day they'd have said the same sort of Monty Python? Do you think they'd have said, "Did you hear? Did you hear? Did you get the bit about? Did you? What did you think when he said?" There would have been life and light.
And what they would have known was that when they asked a question, he didn't answer it. He was very bad at answering questions, because what he tended to do was tell a story, so that there was a freedom for people to take the story as with laughter. It's your own, and it there's this, as I'm trying to say earlier, a sort of emotional or spiritual agrophobia that sometimes prevents you from simply thinking what you think and being who you are, and not trying to wrestle with it.
Thinking what you think, being allowed to question things and laugh at things and feel doubts and confusions, whatever. Yeah.
There's a bit in the New Testament, isn't there, where the disciples are gathered in this place after Jesus' death, and he reappears, and they're frightened, it says, reasonably, I suppose, and they don't know what to do.
Sometimes we're horrified by these sort of things. They were frightened. We're so frightened.
Well, of course it's frightening. And there he is. So, and then they go through one or two things, and then he says, give me some fish. And so he eats some fish. And I don't know, but I imagine they said, yeah, that's him. He loved his food. Look at him eating that fish. That's him. There was something about the ordinariness of it that rescued the situation. And I think if we leave that out and lack it in the way we talk about these things.
Well, I'm not sure if I said it last week, but one of the things I was talking to somebody about this weekend as well was that however sad a funeral is, very, very often once you meet together after that, there's quite a lot of laughter, because you remember all the funny little stories, the family stories, the things that happened, the time when somebody fell off something or made a mess of something. It won't be the perfect meal. It'll be the meal where everything goes wrong. The holiday where things, do you remember when?
I know.
And it will often be something really, really silly that happened. Like our children have this wonderful memory of you dancing down the river one day, didn't they?
Running down the river.
Well, running. Yeah. Well, I think dancing would be better.
Well,
you
leaping
have to
and
imagine.
jumping.
Yes. Never mind. Yes, you know that little Christian song about leaping and praising God. Well, you were leaping down this river, and it was because you trodden on a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
But
as I ran towards you,
screamingly funny.
I ran up the hill towards you with the hornets stinging me.
Yes.
With you all laughing. It was great fun. I remember that.
But it was something we remembered, like the time when one of our sons was trying to fish and caught your ear.
Yeah, that was fun too.
Yes. But what I mean is those are the things. It would be lovely to hear some of the stories, the little things that have remained as part of your family humour book.
I know my mother, who's long gone, unfortunately, would have laughed about my story, which is a true story about meeting a man she'd known, and him saying, "How's your mother?" and me saying, because the pattern was so engraved in me, I said, "Oh, she's fine." And as he turned away, I thought, "No, she's just dead." And I said, "Look, sorry, excuse me, sorry. I know it sounds ridiculous, but actually she's not fine, she's dead." The poor fellow nearly dropped to the ground. But she would have found that hilarious, as I did. Anyway, and as for the black humour, we won't go into that. I enjoy a bit of black humour from time to time. But, we'll talk about that another time. So we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.